Welcome to the brand new Season 4 of the Moving On podcast. Babe, can I say I'm the brand new Jay Norman?
Oh, I think you can, as long as I can say I'm the brand new Jess Norman.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Thank you guys for being here for 4 seasons.
Yeah, guys, thank y'all so much.
And let's go.
Hi, babe.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. What are you up to?
I'm fixing to record another episode with you.
I know we're doing good, right?
We are.
Are we a week behind or not?
Probably so, but that's okay.
It's okay. I know we're a week behind with our other podcast with me and my 4 girlfriends. It's Huddle Co. And we were trying to do Huddle Co. one week and then moving on the next week. And I want to say, do you think that both have gotten back a week?
We definitely have, for sure. So I assume Huddle Co. has too.
So he said, what are we talking about tonight? I was like, we are just going to talk. We're just going to get an episode out and get in the habit of being obedient that this is when we record.
We're going to record.
You know, when I go to speak to my therapist, there's a lot of times where the first 30 minutes of our communication is just us catching up on our lives. And it's one of those things where the better we know each other, the better the whole process can be. And so it serves just as good of a purpose, you know? And so I said, you know, even if it's just a night where we're just gaining a little bit more of a closeness with all of you, I think it would be really beneficial.
Oh, for sure. And we seem to have plenty going on
We do.
talk about.
Yeah. Well, and I think it is something pretty unhealthy for us to try to get distracted from this, because as soon as we want to get back to it, you know, that's when it starts that we don't want to record, or we don't have time to record, or we don't want to record because we don't know what to record about. And I just want to fight through all of that. We experience it over on the Huddle also.
Yeah.
And I always say, you know, we're third base runners. And so a lot of times you and I tend to argue right before, like kind of Satan throws a lit match between the two of us, and we tend to argue before.
So is that why you waited and just sprung this on me earlier today?
Yes. And
you did good.
Didn't you know that it worked?
It did. Yeah, that was kind of nice.
You like it?
I do.
Okay, good.
So we've mentioned on here a little bit that we have a really nice place we live that we really love, and it works really great for where our kids all go.
Our place here?
Yes.
Oh, did you just tell our listeners we have a really nice place?
Well, I'm just saying for us, it's something.
In our opinion.
Yeah, well, we really enjoy being here.
Yeah. Y'all have to
And-
know that he has like the best heart on earth, because he says that sentence and doesn't even realize how it sounds.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean it that way at all.
He just means like he likes it here.
Well, I do, but our
know.
issue is I've always lived out away from people and never had a lot of neighbors, and we're getting a lot of neighbors, and so I was bringing all that up to say that I don't know if we mentioned on here, but we've picked out kind of our forever spot that we think we want to move further away from here and further out in the country to build on. And so we were sitting out there on Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Under the tent, and Jess was struggling with the time frame to get there.
Well, because my kids go to a school that everyone lives next door to the school, and y'all are going to find this funny, but we only live about 12 minutes from it. But if you ask my kids, and if you ask my kids' friends and their parents, they would say we live 30, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
It just feels far to them since they're just a stone's throw from the schools. And so now we're wanting to move double. And so instead of being 14 miles from the school, we would be about 28. It has absolutely suffocated me, and I don't know what to do with it. I know the enemy has gotten me because he knows it's a soft spot for me. Ultimately, because you kind of have to wade through it. Like, what are you scared of? Why are you scared of it? What is the worst thing that could happen? Why would that be a bad thing that would happen? And with me, ultimately, 2 things. I don't want Cash driving on this main highway that goes between point A and point B. And they're working on it, so it's going to be a lot nicer. And 2, I don't want Cash and a little bit older Liza, because ultimately the big kids will be in college. I don't want Cash and Liza to say, well, we'll just stay at Dad's because
Yeah.
it's easier and
Right, it's
closer. As I already don't get enough time with them, with the two homes.
Right.
So it was absolutely shutting me down. It's not hard to shut me down if you kind of pull a fast one on me. And we finally timed it this weekend, and it's only going to tack on an extra 15 minutes. And for the majority of our listening base is country folk, so y'all are probably rolling laughing right now. But there's something about it, like to go from 15 minutes from the school to 30 minutes from the school when everyone else is less than 5 minutes.
Well, when you get out the door late most mornings, that does
Yes.
complicate the situation
It
too a
does.
little bit.
It's early.
Yeah.
And you all know this already too, but my kids go to school at 7, 8, and nearly 9, and then they get picked up at 3, 4, and 5. So when you tack on some extra mileage to your finish point, that is a long day.
Yeah, it is. And probably all of y'all are experiencing it too since
Yeah.
COVID.
Yeah.
The country's changing, and where we live, we were close enough to the Metroplex. We were just getting a lot of people moving
Yes,
out to us, and
yes.
I'm not used to
Oh,
having to
gosh.
wait anywhere at a stop sign or even stop. And now we're having to wait 10, 20 cars to get out of our driveway or get out onto the highway, not our driveway, but out onto the highway off of County Road. So
My entire family is in areas around Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and my only brother and his wife, they live about, 3 or 4 miles from their school, and it takes them 45 minutes to get there. And I think of that a lot while I'm trying to go over this decision.
No.
The distance doesn't always determine the decision. I've talked, of course, there's 4 or 5 schools around our new place, our forever spot. I've tried to talk to the kids about maybe switching, and that might be an option.
right. Well, I bring up all this to say that we were sitting out there on Mother's Day, and we were trying to figure out a way to make sure, number one, we wanted to live there
Yes.
at some point, and
the
number
answer
two,
is
to enjoy it. And so we went out and bought a travel trailer, and that's probably, I think, the
You
third.
so skimmed over the whole even conversation, which I know it was a short one, but you even managed to just skim over it.
Which part?
Which we were sitting by the water, and
Oh,
I was thinking, okay, let's sell our place, move to our forever spot. Then maybe I could buy like a really small apartment where they go to school. And Jay was sweating, like forehead sweat. And so he goes, what if we put a camper out here? And it was not anything I had even considered. And it was brilliant.
Yeah.
It was my birthday. It was not my birthday. It was my Mother's Day made, because it was an answer I'd been looking for. I hadn't really been very vocal with you about my worry.
Yeah.
Just been kind of closed in on myself. And of course, it's either you or Cam that always have the answer. But I guess I just don't trust you with the problem, or I don't want to seem like a worry wart.
I'm going to come up with a cheap,
Yeah.
low end version, and
Sure.
that may not be too easy.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he goes into this mode where he's looking on his phone 24 hours a day for the next only 2 days. Had a camper bought it from some very new best friends in Oklahoma that were already ready
Yeah,
to.
she asked me, she said, have you been looking a long time? I said, started Sunday night, standing at your house Tuesday night. So, no, not very long.
No, not
Not
at
very
all.
long at all.
And they said, I went and met the wife on Saturday while Jay worked and got the title. And she said, well, she had a million things to say about Jay. They loved Jay. He went while I had the kids. And she said, when he drove away, my husband goes, he has got his work cut out for him. Because it was only really Jay thinking on it for like 2 days. And if you're camper folks, you realize what we stepped into.
Yeah, and I've been in, that was my third time to ever walk in one.
Sure.
Yeah.
But what I told her was, I said, yes, you are 100% correct. But what you might not realize is Jay, his hobby is work. He loves working. And so work will be nothing for him. It has been something for us.
It has been an ordeal for sure. We're working our way through it, though. Looking forward to spending a little time with the kids out there in the summer is the main thing. That's what we were after.
Yeah, and it's going to be lovely.
Yeah, and one good part of it, too, is that, we probably won't ever get built out there before our oldest kids graduate, but it allows, them for it to kind of become maybe their spot, too, even though
Right?
they probably won't ever get to live in the home unless they end up living with us till they're in their 30s or something. So
I don't think we had been very. I don't know if we knew what was going to happen once we figured out where we needed to be with where we wanted to build. Because as soon as we decided it and figured it out, now it kind of calls to us.
yeah. Well, and too, another part, for selfishly for me is it puts me
Yeah.
2 minutes from where I need to be every morning instead of 20. So
Well, and he has mentioned several times in our marriage, he used to live on his farmland and he liked walking outside and seeing it.
yeah.
I always felt really bad that you didn't have that here. And so I like out there to describe it to you guys. We have a new lake that waters the corn to the backyard. Our new fight will be, I'm going to have a 4th of July party and you can't drain the lake. And he's going to be saying he needs to drain it. So that's going to be our new marriage fight. But anyways, the backyard is the lake. And the one side of the house is a little tiny tree belt that kind of hugs us in there. The front yard is a big, beautiful pond that I'm going to stock for my dad and brother. And then the rest is corn
Yep.
as far as the eye can see. So it's going to be so nice.
Yep. One of these days.
Yeah.
So farming wise, you mentioned the corn and kind of tell y'all where we're at in the process. Corn is getting to the point that it's fixing to start making an ear, getting close. So we're getting worried about heat and rain, and we're about 2 weeks away from
Yeah,
wheat
say
harvest.
what day it is so farmers know where we are.
We're May the 16th today, and so we'll harvest wheat around June 1.
Right.
And the corn is getting ready. Some of it's getting ready to tassel probably in the next few days. Some of it's a
Yeah.
little further off. And we got a little bit of rain last night to get us through this next hot spell. And really, we're extremely fortunate from our trip up to see Cam in Colorado, people I've talked to in Kansas, and we went through Kansas and Oklahoma and everything, central, South Texas. We're the garden spot of our state and really our region. We're just extremely, not necessarily muddy like where we have been in the past, but we're really green. Stuff's really beautiful, and we're in a really good position where in the last few years we've been really underwater and had a lot of crop damage, but maybe this year we're going to lug out and get the right amount.
I hope so.
Yeah.
We need a good year home.
It would be nice not to harvest wheat with in the water, so like we did last year.
I kind of feel like we've all turned into a big old bunch of wussies here in Texas because we've had it so mild that it's only in like maybe the high 80s and we're all sweating our shirts out and talking about how hot
but
it
a
is.
week ago we were still wearing hoodies. It
Yeah.
was still cold here, and it just went from
Yeah.
really from winter to summer.
We are not
kinda
acclimated.
Skipped very much of a spring, seemed like.
We need to go back to our Durango trip. We haven't gotten to talk about it.
Yep. So we went. It's been about 2 weeks ago now. We went
Yep.
to see Cam in Durango, and
Yeah.
I'll let you
For her
fill in on-
birthday.
For her birthday.
Yep, that's our new tradition. We were with her last year on her birthday, this year on her birthday, and so we're always going to try to make it work, which is really comforting because when you live states away from your person and people, it helps to kind of make these traditions that you can kind of look forward to.
One part that
What?
I'll bring up too is our air travel, the trip to the airport, and then once we got there, and then the
Yeah.
trip home.
What was about the air travel?
Oh, that we drove to the airport.
Oh,
The-
I don't want you to say that.
Oh, really?
Oh, I had suppressed it.
Oh, sorry.
I had totally
I haven't.
forgot that it even happened.
So we leave to go to the airport. We had an early flight to
Babe,
go.
you're hurting my feelings.
I am?
Well, I didn't know we were even going to
Well,
talk
I'm just telling
about
all that
it.
to tell about the story
Yeah,
when
I
we
know.
get there.
Okay.
So anyway, we missed our first flight, and Cam was going to pick us up, but we missed our first flight for reasons y'all can figure out.
That
And
is so rude.
and so we ended up getting into Durango in the afternoon, and Cam was having a birthday party, so she couldn't pick us up.
Right.
So we get off the plane. As soon as we land, I turn my phone on and start searching for an Uber. Nothing. And all the way waiting to get our bags, nothing. Walk outside, talk to this guy. He's got a van, looks like something to give you a ride. He goes, I probably can be back in an hour and a half to 2 hours. And there's another guy standing there, and I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, well, he said, I've been trying to get an Uber. I've been standing here an hour and a half, and I can't get a taxi. I can't get a ride or anything. And so I just made a decision then. I knew we were late for the party, so I went in the rental counter, and I said, hey, I wondered about getting a car for 3 days. And she was like, well, it'll be $780. And we about fell over. And
I said, babe, please don't.
Yeah.
Because I knew he was done. He won't wait. So I knew he was done, and I knew he was going to tell her, well, this is our only option, so we're going to do it. And I was like, babe, please don't. Please don't tell her yes.
yeah, so we balked, and some way or
Yeah.
another, she hit the 60% button, and we ended up getting it for about $300, and an Uber was going to cost us $110. So
Yeah. And this is how that conversation went. Sir, it's going to be $770. And I go, please, babe, please don't do that. And he goes, we just can't do that. And she goes, hold on, 330.
Yeah,
And
it
I
was
was like,
330.
why?
Yeah.
Why is it not 770, but it's 330?
Yeah.
And Jay's like, just be quiet
Yep.
and smile.
Yeah, I'm taking the car. So we rent this car, and we're getting ready to leave, and we're walking out. And this guy talked to me. He was really helpful to me and gave me a card of a place that he'd been trying to call. And anyway, we're getting out there, and I said, just, do you mind if I go ask him if he wants us to give him a ride to town? He said he'd been sitting here an hour and a half, 2 hours. She goes, no, that's fine. So I walk up and ask him, and wants to ride? And he goes, yeah, sure, if you don't mind taking me. So I walk over and introduce him to Jess, and I'll let you tell her.
He wants me to tell y'all that I said, are you a serial killer? And he said, no. And I said, if you were a serial killer, how would you do it? And he said, wow.
Yeah.
And I said, that's the only answer we were accepting. Hop in.
Yeah.
So I threw it on TikTok, and it's at 200,000 right now.
Wow.
And everybody has been so funny. The comments are so funny. This one lady, she goes, you should have said, what are the chances we all be one?
Unfortunately, he was not one. He ended up being a really nice guy.
That's a funny sentence.
And we ended up taking him all the way to his house in Durango, which wasn't much out of our way. But Cam lives out in the country from Durango, and we were late for the party. But we ended up meeting this guy, and he ended up being a super nice guy.
Such
And
a nice
and we
dude.
kind of kept
made of the really good stuff.
Yeah, and he was meeting his family there. It was a really important family vacation.
Yes.
And anyway, he's we go to the rodeo in Vegas every year. We've talked about it here, and he's in Las Vegas, and so we're gonna
That's where he lives.
meet up with him.
Yeah.
Meet up with him there. Really liked him. And
But, anytime we've corresponded with him on text, it's not just a, hey, what's up? It's more of a, here's a picture of my kids, and this is what you guys mean to me. And there's just a lot of substance.
yeah, so he ended up being a really nice guy,
Yeah.
and we made a friend. And so we get there to Cam's, have a great time, and we've talked about what Cam's going through on here. So it was really good to see her and
Yes.
be with her. And we ended up staying 3 days. The weather was it was windy, but it was really
So
really
nice.
nice. Yeah.
I do want to go back to how we missed the flight. Of course, it was my fault. We had gotten a new vehicle, and my mind just placed my purse where it always is, next to Jay's leg while he's driving. And so when I went to reach for it as we entered the airport, I'm touching carpet. It's in my old vehicle. And it was just one of those mind tricks, and I just have to tell y'all that it is one of those 30 minutes from the depths of hell where you're just, I don't know if any of y'all are, but I wrestled and I struggled and I sat there and I just tried to breathe. And I'm like, you're grown. You're not in trouble. No one is going to yell at you. Jay's not a husband that yells, so he's not going to yell. And Cam is not going to yell. She loves you. You're not in trouble. Had to walk through that. And then I just had to walk through. I can only describe it as just like a hollow despair. I was just so sad that I had done it. I made us miss our flight. So our neighbor, we only have one neighbor. Jay called him, and Bailey, he grabbed my purse and headed for us. So we're about 45 minutes away at the airport gate, And so we met him halfway. He threw our purse at us, gave him a hug, and we drive back. I let Jay off because he's a smooth talker. I knew all we needed was a nice person. All you need when you're in that situation is a nice person that works with the airline to actually give a care about you. So I dropped Jay off, praying he's going to be nice, because the moment Jay gets ugly, we're done. And so I dropped him off at Go Park, and I was in nice pants and sandals, and I genuinely ran for a solid mile, just ran, which was like a very slow saunter. And I get to the counter, and they say, we've already checked your bags. We can't get both of you on there because we can't get your bags on there. And they can't, they have that rule that they can't send your bags one way and you guys get on a different flight because that's a safety.
Yeah, they quit letting bags on at 45 minutes for the departure time, and so we missed it by about 12.
So Jay called me. He said, don't break your neck, which I'm running. He's like, don't break your neck. They're not letting us on. We walk up, and he says, I can get her on, but Jay, you would have to stay and wait for the bags. And I was like, there's no way in my life I am causing this and then leaving you here. So we always say, we're together. No. Anytime we get in a screwy situation that we don't want to be in, we're like, well, we're together.
So that was our going trip. We get there, have a great time. We get ready to leave, and the last day we're eating lunch in town, and I just happened to look at my phone just to double check.
Cam and I were already really sad.
Yeah, they were. They were sad that we were leaving, and I checked my email, and lo and behold, our flight's canceled.
Yeah.
Mid-afternoon.
We were so
Moved us
happy.
to a later one, and there were storms in Dallas, so we'd ended up not getting out that night.
Yeah.
Go to the next day, we're booked to another flight, and we're getting ready to walk out the door to go check my email again. That one's canceled. So we're three down. I finally get a really good, helpful guy that's in Dallas on the phone, and he says, well, you can get on the one in the morning. And I'm like, no, I'm ready to go to Texas. And so he got us booked on a United flight, and we ultimately got home about 1:30 in the morning. So
yeah, and I will tell y'all, the guys that we saw right after we missed our flight, we were so thankful to them, and because they helped us immensely get on a 3 p.m.
at
flight.
the American counter, yep.
And we told them just how appreciative we were and that we prayed for nice people, that we would find nice people to help us, because we know how important that is. Like, if you get someone having a bad day, you're not getting on a plane.
No.
And they told us, they were like, yeah, no problem. They said, if y'all would have been any type of rude, we'd have told you to go fly a kite.
Yeah.
So that is your reminder to just stay kind in that situation.
Yeah, well, and that definitely was our fault for sure.
My fault.
No, either way.
Sorry.
So we had a great trip, and glad to be back home, and that's
so
kind
nice.
of been our wild string of events that happens to us, and happened again every time we travel.
We always have a story.
Yeah, we always have a story when
Yeah,
we travel.
I told our buddy, our hitchhiker, I said, I'm pretty sure we were supposed to meet you, that we missed our flight because we were supposed to meet you. So, like, what's so good about you?
Well, and I mean, and just Bailey doing what he did, bringing that,
gosh.
and us getting to pay it forward, to that guy to make everything work
I didn't
out.
make that connection, honey. That's so lovely of you to even say that.
Yeah, we got to pay it forward somewhat. I didn't really either till just right now.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah, and we don't know what's going to come with our relationship with Hitchhiker.
Yeah.
But I know so far it's just been lovely getting to know him. So I think even just meeting him in December, I think that's going to unfold a little bit more for us to realize why it happened the way it
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah, it was very interesting for sure.
Right?
So we talk a lot on here about mental health, and you were saying a while ago that you spend half of your hour of therapy getting to know your therapist. And so I think that allows you to be more open with them. And I was just wondering your thoughts, and if that's something that evolved over time, or was that immediate, or is that something you were trying to do to get to know him, or
Well, his practice is he's not going to create a problem where there's not one. And I was thinking on it this week because we're in the process of trying to find therapists for our children right now because we're in the firm belief that they need to start, whether they go to therapy once a quarter or once a year, they need to start learning how to speak to a therapist instead of waiting till they're adults. And so while I was thinking on that, I was just kind of thinking through all the different therapists I've been to. And I want to say I've seen at least 8. You just have to kiss a lot of frogs before you find yours. And I've absolutely found mine. And his thing is he's just not going to make a problem where there isn't one. And so pretty much if I'm not brave enough to bring it out or bring it up, we're just going to shoot the shit for an hour.
yeah,
And I know that. And it allows me to be intentional with my time with him. Because if I'm going to not be serious about it, we're just going to talk about small talk. you know?
well, and sometimes when you've been down a really hard road of therapy, sometimes you need that day
you
just because
do.
you know
You
the consequences. And I mean, not that it's bad, but at the end, it can be exhausting that at some point, if you're dealing with a lot of stuff, and sometimes you need that break.
There's a huge trust factor.
Yeah.
So if you don't know that person, how are you ever going to, when he and I made our big break about a month ago, we had already been together for maybe a year.
Yeah.
And he said he kind of was going down this path and I had gone down a little bit further. And he's like, I don't think you're thinking correctly on the answer to all of this. And I was like, I know that I am from what he told me. And so it was like I used his tools to get my answer, but he wasn't with me. And he said, the only way you're right is if you're not telling me something. What are you not telling me? And I was like, I'm not telling you a world of information. I had just kind of withheld it, or maybe didn't think it was important, or you little by little pull back the curtain. It's not an instantaneous.
Right.
Here I am. This whole show of
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you overwhelm them, it's hard to, for them to pick it out too.
they're just human.
Yeah.
And so he said, what aren't you showing me? What aren't you saying to me? And I said, a world's worth. And he said, this is after a full year, I think, a year, right?
Yeah.
Or 2. And he said, well, let's hear it. And I just started unraveling all of it and telling all of it to him. And his eyes have been so bright ever since.
Yeah.
Not disappointment or shock, just I want to say that he is seeing it in real time also, the process of finally fully trusting another person that's not your spouse or best
Right.
friend. And so I want to say when we got to maybe that mark where I thought, I think I'm doing pretty good, I bet you I could just take some time off, was only the point where something real started to occur.
Yeah.
And I think that's really intriguing.
Right. Well, I know for me, growing up, when you hear the term mental health, I mean, I had my idea of what that meant. I mean, I don't know if it's the right way to say it, but if a person was mental, they were crazy,
Yeah.
and there was those people, and then I just thought everybody else was
Was
normal.
not,
There was
yeah.
just one or the other.
Sure.
And now, as an adult and going through everything we've gone through and going to a therapist, I realize that there's all kinds of levels of a mental state, and it changes throughout the year, throughout the
Yeah.
week, and throughout your lifetime, and as you figure stuff out and things happen, and it's been a pretty eye-opening experience for sure.
Right. It's weird that the two of us have made such huge realizations on that very front just in the past few months,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
I think just because we stuck with it long enough, I don't think we've ever stuck with it this long. And, I was raised that iron sharpens iron, and I was raised, show me your community and I'll show you your future. And you don't think of your therapist being a part of your community, but they very much are.
Yeah.
I mean, they know the deepest, darkest parts of us, and they know what happens behind, they say nobody knows what happens behind closed doors. Like, how could they have gotten divorced? They were so happy. And they say nobody knows what happens behind closed doors. Well, our therapists do.
Yeah.
And they know everything. And
And I think
know-
for us, is for what we've dealt with as a marriage, I mean, they've had us come in at all stages of that. Not like
Yeah.
they called. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
the timing has worked out that we've been in, and so they've gotten to see all these different,
right?
and that's the part you can't pick when you're going to get in a fight, and if therapy's the next day, and so
We've had it that next moment.
Oh, yeah,
we've
for
had
sure.
it. We've gotten in. We go to therapy at the same time. He goes to one office and I go to the other, and we got in an argument on the way.
yeah, and we've got an argument afterwards before.
That's not funny.
Mm-hmm.
There is something really neat, though, when you were talking, I was realizing there is something really neat for someone to know all of your secrets and still be really excited to see you.
Yeah,
There's something odd about that.
yeah,
Because there's a lot of times in friendship when you tell the secrets and they run for the hills, or you
Yeah.
just never see them again, or the relationship dwindles somehow. And so really, you're stuck with your family and you're stuck with your spouse, but there's not really relationships that are behind the curtain that choose to stay around. I know that we are paying them, and it's horrible to say, but I just mean I'm a pulse taker and a temp taker, and I still know that my guy really likes me.
yeah.
That's nice.
Well, and it is, and then just the realization too is like I was telling a young friend of mine. I mean, going through some stuff, and there's no need for you to carry that around your whole life and wait until you're 50 years old to get that off your chest, get it out of your mind, or to work your way through it. I mean, it's right there for the taking for you to go, and just the freedom that gives you to go do that, and to take the time to go do it. I guess for me, that's the biggest realization that I've had out of it, is just, it's there. Somebody's there to help you. And like you said, you had to kiss some frogs to get that out.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a way for you to unload stuff that bothers you too, but at the same time have somebody that's, maybe they don't have a solution the first 10 times you go, the first 20,
Yeah.
but they're working on it, and they're thinking about it, and that's what they do. And so, and maybe it's not a fix-all solution, maybe it's just the start of the process to fix it, but it is a time-consuming deal, but it's worth the work for sure.
Oh, for sure. And that AA phrase, it works if you work it. I mean, there is so much that is solely dependent on you and the effort that you put into it.
Yeah.
And you can hide whatever you want, but you're not going to work through that part
Right.
of you.
And this podcast we're talking about, we're obviously a divorced couple, and we remarried, and we have a blended family. And for us, Jess was going to a therapist. We went to another therapist for couples, And basically, he split us up, and he took me, and Jess goes to another one. And so,
Yeah.
They just looked at us and realized, hey, we've got to get them, right as individuals before we can get them right as a couple. And that's been a huge deal for us. And, for me, for sure, I'm, sitting there thinking, I really don't know, what I need or don't need out of this. But, I mean, it is a very freedom-giving thing. I'll say it that way.
I said last time on the episode that there were so many times where you could tell that you had been going to therapy, and that only has exponentially increased.
Yeah.
Like you're a freight train at this point, as far as just kind of stepping into that potential I knew you had,
Yeah.
as far as emotional intelligence, and there's a whole new change in you.
Well, the way I look at it too is just like we've talked about a lot on here, as far as being divorced and as far as being a step parent, how after we've done it a certain amount of time, you can recognize it in other people and what they're going through and know what they're going through. And it's the same thing going to a therapist in mental health when somebody, is talking about something a certain way or worried about something, you can, you
Recognize
can
it.
recognize it
Yeah.
and see it just because you went and talked to somebody about the same thing. And they're like, well, here's why you're doing this. And you can start recognizing other people and not necessarily that's helping, but it as far as us helping them, but it just allows you to recognize, hey, I mean, that person's going through the exact same thing right beside you.
Oh, for sure. Which makes you, feel a lot more normal.
Yeah.
But we swap notes. You and I swap notes all the time, and there's tools that your therapist has given you that I've used
Yeah.
a bunch.
Yeah.
And same with me. I'll kind of tell you what he's saying, and so we've kind of got this coming from both sides. But one of the nicest things you say about me is it ran in our family till it ran into my baby. And you think like, well, how do you break those generational curses? And there's definitely a bunch of different ways, but just even going to therapy regularly and working through these things that you're not okay with,
Yeah.
weeding these things out where maybe your parents didn't, or maybe your grandparents didn't, or maybe your great-grandparents didn't. And so sitting in another seat and doing something different and then changing the path of,
Yeah.
we've said it on here before, heal yourself and you'll heal your children's children. And that's what you and I are wanting to do, is 'cause we don't want we love our life. It's so funny how much we love our life, but at the same time, we don't love the struggle.
Yeah.
And we don't want our children to struggle with it. And we see the world that they're being raised in, and we're not dummies. We know that they're going to have to be a lot stronger than us.
Yeah.
And so if we can help aid them to have more tools, that's what we talk about in our family, is emotional tools in your emotional toolbox. And so for us with the kids, it might be a run with the dogs, or 100 shots with the basketball, or a bath, or we have a bunch that we can list out, and maybe they'll choose one and maybe they won't, but we want to have those ready for them. And we want to be able to know how to instruct our children just as well as our therapist can instruct us. We want to just have all of that information. Your therapist told you this beautiful analogy about a lot of people get a box that they can put stuff in a box, whether it's a person they can't really deal with, or something they can't deal with, or something that's very troubling, they imagine themselves putting in a box. Well, Jay's therapist gave him a shipping container. And so all week long, I'm putting stuff in this shipping container that has this door that slams shut with that huge clamor,
Yeah.
I listen to the sound in my head. Isn't that so funny? And so I passed it down. I've used it so much this week that I passed it down to one of our children to use too. And so where you're sitting in office with your therapist, he doesn't realize that one of our kids is walking around town putting stuff in a shipping container.
Yeah.
And now maybe one of you that's listening needed that same
Yep.
shipping container. And so the spread of it, which I think is the whole purpose, is to be able to when you arm parents with the information that they need to be better parents, and they don't have to be so focused on their struggles that they can't really be present.
Yeah.
So there's so many different ways that it's attacked just by sitting on a couch and talking to someone for an hour.
Yeah, for sure.
Somebody that you're not going to go to sleep with.
Right. Well, and I think looking at it from another standpoint too is that we're obviously we're on our second marriage, and that's what this podcast about. But we have listeners that are not on their second marriage; they're married now, and
Yeah.
I mean that struggle goes for the same thing. I think for us going through the divorce, everything that we went through, and then trying to blend the family and what it took, it put us into having to go to therapy, which brought all this to light. And I think we've said on here before, you said, like I've said, I can look back and see everything I did wrong in my first marriage.
Sure.
And that was a little pile. And now after going through therapy, I can see that was a lot more. And so even if you are a person that is not divorced and not on a second marriage, but struggling in a first, I mean, I think it's definitely, I think both of us would admit, I know I would,
For
that
sure.
I would have been a lot better spouse if I would have went when I was in my early 20s versus, wait until I was nearly 50 years old,
Oh, goodness. I mean, y'all know my ex-husband. We talked a lot about him on our previous episode, but he's one of my best friends. I just tell him I'm sorry all the time. I randomly just say, I'm sorry. And he's like, just, that's done. That's over.
Yeah.
And I'm like, not for me. Like, I need to tell you, I need to tell you a little bit more. I met a brand new friend this week, and just after about an hour of meeting each other, she said, Jess, you just don't seem like somebody that would have to get divorced. That's how she worded it. And it was just to be nice. Like, it was so flattering. And I was like, that is so nice of you to say. But ultimately, Jay doesn't become Jay, and I don't become me until we get married.
Right.
So we had to find each other before we find this version
Right.
of ourselves. There's absolutely no possible way in my situation that I would have ever found my feet. It just wasn't. You and I talk nearly every day about what do we want out of this life? What do we want out of being parents? What is our intention with the kids? What is our intention in our marriage? What are our goals for the farm? I mean, you and I, we have a double shower. We get in there every single night and we talk till we're blue in the face about what exactly do we want from this one trip around the sun. And I didn't have those talks. I just didn't. I had a very tiny, simple life that would have made anyone happy, but it didn't make me happy. I want so much out of this life. And the goals and the desires and the want that I have from this life, I've only seen it matched in one other individual, and that's you. And so in one fell swoop, you made me feel normal for wanting so much. And also, you seemed to love me just as much as I loved you. And never in my entire life have I loved someone the same amount. I love everybody more. I love my kids more. I love my parents more. I love my friends more. I've never had it matched.
We've had this conversation a lot too.
I've never had someone love me as much as I've loved them. And so Jay is numero uno, one, the first person to ever match it. And he's the first person to ever in real life match my energy or my want out of this life. I want the goodie. I want all the goodie
Yeah.
out of this life. And I work every single day to get more and more and
Yeah.
more.
And I would say on top of that, that you're more and more and more, so it builds.
Yeah.
And it took me 4 years in to kind of really realize what you were doing, and that's why, now I'm in therapy more, concentrating on more to try to, to match that pace, because I mentally was not where I could understand it. And I mean, therapy has definitely helped me get to that point where I can, so we can continue to grow on it. That's the way I see it anyway.
You have a really good therapist. I mean, a really.
Yeah, he is good.
Yeah, you have a really good therapist. And my therapist listens to our show. So he heard me talk about how much I love your therapist and miss your therapist. And I was telling him, I was like, of course, backpedaling. And he was like, you don't have to say any of that. And I'm like, I know, but I do need you to know that where Jay's therapist would be like my best bud and we would be best friends for the rest of our life. And he'd probably not call me on anything, my therapist and I are opposites. And so we bring that to the table, and that is the only way that we work. I don't know if necessarily opposites, but we're very, very different from each other. Your therapist is just the male version of me, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's so lovely. I love him. I love both of them, of course, but
Well, they've both been extremely helpful to us, for sure.
Yeah. So even, if you're we found out this week that you can do telehealth with our therapists and therapists just like ours if you're in Texas. So that's kind of how it works. If you're curious, is therapists are licensed in their state. Even if you can't find a therapist to locally go sit in front of, or maybe you don't even want to, maybe you want to do it on your phone, you can get a hold of a therapist that actually just practices in your state and do something called telehealth, which is just Zoom for psychiatry. Or if you have somebody that goes to a therapist and they live 4 hours across the state, see if their person does telehealth and see if they like their therapist. And that's another place to start. But I will tell you, it did take us a little bit to figure out if we did like them. It for sure didn't take us a year to trust them. It just took a year for some things to finally start coming out. But I will tell you, if you don't like your therapist, I hope you don't give up on therapy. That's just like getting a friend and not liking the person and giving up on friendship. I mean, if you don't like your therapist, I went through at least 6 therapists that I was like, this is not good. Like, how are we going to find someone if this is what's out there? And then we finally found them. And lo and behold, they're in the offices next door to each other.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think too is being able to, even if it's just to the point to just unload what you're on. If you're the type of person that I am, or always have been, extremely private, and you just hold everything in, once you get that relationship built with them where you can go in there and just unload it all, and even if that's all you do, it's worth that, because there's just some things that you're not gonna say to anybody. There's some things I'm not gonna load you down with, and vice versa. And I mean, it's just the way it is, and just the value of that alone is worth the trip to go.
Right.
So,
or just if you can't afford it and that's not in the budget, just even reaching out to somebody that you've been watching and you trust. And we have friends that we know we can call and we're not going to get a biased answer out of, and or they need to fix it immediately. We're just going to get an ear, and that's just like Jay says, getting it off your chest is just as helpful until you can afford, some professional help. We think that our dogs just murdered someone in the woods. We both just...
Wow, that was...
What was it?
I don't know. I hope it was
Think
dogs.
I should go check it out?
I don't know. I hope it was dogs. I don't see anything out there.
And on that note, I wanted to get an episode out tonight. We didn't necessarily have something that God was laying on our hearts, and we didn't have a guest that we knew God was asking us to have on. But I knew I wanted to get an episode out because I want us to get under the discipline of recording our episodes because I know it's so healthy for us, and it's ultimately a goal of ours that we have now is to be on schedule. We spent the day together, and I just asked you, what did you think what did you have for tonight? And he said, you have to get me started. And I like to build from there. And I said, I know, but I always start us. So I kind of want to know your thoughts. Like, have you been thinking on anything? And so we kind of went down this path, of something else. And you mentioned mental health, which made me just a very, just a very proud wife that I have this cowboy farmer in my driver's seat, as man can be. Wanting to discuss mental health on our podcast just made me a very proud wife. And I want you to kind of say the reasoning again. I know you touched on it a little bit earlier, but when you spoke on it today, I just knew God bringing you to a space where you would like to discuss mental health. It's just so, it's just is what it is. You don't even have to label it. But I do know, honey, how many people that you're going to help, because there are so many farmers and men, gruff men just like you, that are not ready to talk about it just yet. And so you will be the game changer for them. And so I want you to tell them what you told me.
Thank you, baby. I think number one is it's the freedom that it brings. You don't, until you truly get that, you can't really see it. And that's what it was for me, was the freedom that it brought, and that I was able to then start recognizing other things that it would help me. And then I really started me down a path of really thinking about what else was I missing, or what else was I not seeing that I needed to improve on. And just that there are varying degrees of mental health that change every day, and being able to recognize that in yourself and recognize that in other people, just the amount of help that it can give you personally, and just taking the time to do it. I mean, it is time out of my schedule every week, and it's time getting there and back, and time being there. But once again, I think that's a pretty cheap investment in your life, for your spouse, for your kids, and for your friends, family, employees, or whatever. I mean, I think it's a pretty cheap investment to where it can lead you, for sure.
Thanks, babe. I know one of the largest parts to me is, those thoughts swirling in your head, and just swirling, and they're repeating, and you're dwelling on them, and you're dreading on them, and they're deciding the direction of your life because you're stuck on these thoughts. And then just one voicing of one of those thoughts out loud, and it changes everything. And there's so many times where you'll say, that's not right. I mean, the moment it comes out, it can end a month of dread. But then there's also these situations where once you do divulge it, and once you do confide in someone, like, look, this is what I've been struggling with, and I think this to be true, the two of you then go on this, scavenger hunt to say, is it true?
Yeah.
And Jay and I today were just talking about how often it's not. It's just not true. The things that we think or assume or presume about others, or how others think, or where this is heading. Or, I mean, if you would have asked us in our first year, where would we be in our 5th year as a family? We'd have been so wrong. Yeah. And there's so many things that we've been wrong on that we've just genuinely kind of let go of the reins. Yeah. Like, obviously, we have no idea what's going on or where we're heading. And we're obviously not in control, because what we think has not even yet come true once.
Well, you see an ideal of what you think is coming, and your mind starts shaping the situation around it, And if you're not thinking that way, if you're just open because you know you've been completely wrong the last 5 years.
What will be, will
yeah,
be.
so don't worry about it. Well, then your mind doesn't take a preconceived notion, and that's when everything for us just took off as a family when we got to that point.
Well, and there's a whole entire episode in that one little concept.
Yeah.
So maybe that'll be our next episode.
Yeah, maybe so.
Hey, thank you for doing this. I know it was last minute and we didn't. We usually at least sit down to the table once and then over the 2 weeks kind of talk on it. And I told him about an hour ago I'd like to record. I'm sick of fighting. I'm sick of fighting every day of.
She tricked me. Well, what else you got?
That's it. Let's go get some dinner.
Sounds good. Well, as the song says, the road goes on forever and the party never ends.
I love you.
I love you too.